Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. It's now time to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world. Well, let's start with this day. Yes, naturally.
Yes,
right? Okay. And then the lead story of this day is security of Nigerians, not negotiable. Buhari restates. DSS raises the alarm on destabilization plot. And that's a story that we took earlier. And some of the other newspapers also have it. And as we said earlier, it's reassuring to see the president, trying to build confidence about the efforts of his administration to ensure safety and security of Nigerians. And this is what he does regularly. And then, of course, on this particular occasion, he was at the Chief of Army Staff annual conference, talking to the military, to the army. And, of course, he praised them for their gallantry, for their contributions to the making of Nigeria to be a very safe environment. And then, of course, the second leg of which we had said the Department of State Services cannot be raising alarm. It has his mandate cut out for him to gather intelligence and to see how the kind of threat that it is describing can be prevented. And then also on the front page of this day, you have the story, another story that we discussed earlier, federal government to transform grazing reserves to ranches in 7 states. And Tundu, Leila, you recall, we expressed concern that this should not be Ruga in disguise through the back door. Because if it turns out to be so, particularly in those 7 pilot states that they have identified, then you could have the old controversy that we thought had gone away over the livestock transformation plan of the National Economic Council coming back and adding to the tension, rather than the long-term objective of, solving the challenge of pastoralists and herders.
And remember, he never actually said that the project was cancelled. It was a project that was suspended. And we were here on the show saying, that means it's definitely going to creep back up. And here we are.
Well, no, I'm not going to reject the idea of ranches in principle, because we need that.
We need that.
I mean, look at the billionaire ranchers all over the world. Can't we have that in Nigeria? Must it be
nice.
Oil and gas? So I'm all for ranches, but there's a huge but there. There has to be, it's a commercial venture and must be treated as such. The federal government has no business getting involved.
Absolutely.
Because, many Nigerians have said if the federal government is going to subsidize ranches under a livestock transformation plan, then, of course, maybe the fisherman should also be subsidized. Maybe the people who run poultries should also be subsidized. But to target only one section of the country for that subsidy will amount to discrimination.
No.
So government in going ahead with this would have to be careful about the politics of it. And that's not difficult to see. But, this has come back to the front pages because of the statement made by the Executive Secretary of the National Commission on Nomadic Education. And at the event in question, the Executive Secretary was saying that they are training persons, and agents to provide nomadic education. Nomadic education is another issue on its own. But anyway, let's leave that. You have another paper, Tuntun?
Okay, let's take a look at The Nation today. And the main headline here, INEC to lobby lawmakers over smart card reader. Agency, it must have legal status. Yakubu laments politicians' attitude. Well, there are no surprises there, unfortunately, with this smart card reader. And the failure of President Buhari to give his assent to the Electoral Amendment Law. We're still in this limbo. And our electoral process is still in this kind of purgatory. I completely agree with Muhammadu Yakubu here with regards to politicians' attitude and the fact that there's a lacuna over such a fundamental part of our electoral process. The whole point of the smart card reader is to curb things like vote over registration, because you used to have those absurd situations where you'd have Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie being registered to vote, and then you'd have ridiculous situations where 10,000 people are registered to vote. Election day, they say 20,000 people voted. So the smart card reader is aimed to curb all of that, and really it should not be in this purgatory. And we have the picture story here. Tributes as Sanwo-Olu, Tinubu, ex-governors, others honor Johnson, former governor of Lagos State, Mobolaji Johnson there. That was his day of tribute.
Yeah, well, two quick comments on the smart card reader. You know, INEC has been reported this way and that way on the issue of smart card reader. There was a story, I guess, early last week, indicating that INEC says smart card reader will not be useful. And now it looks, then INEC came back again and said, you know, it didn't quite say so, that it was misinterpreted. But in major, all of this should be seen within the context of the call for electronic voting. In the Electoral Act Amendment Bill that has passed the second stage of reading at the Senate, you know, what is proposed is electronic voting, the use of technology, and that will include the smart card reader and the electronic transmission of election results. And INEC maintaining a database, a server, which will be in place until all litigations are completed. And the People's Democratic Party, while receiving a team from INEC, the team on party monitoring, Uche Secondo said that in the future, the People's Democratic Party may in fact not take part in elections if INEC, the Electoral Commission, does not upgrade its act and adopt technology, and that electronic voting is essential, you know, for proper documentation, for transparency and for accountability. On the funeral rites of the first governor of Lagos State, Mobolaji Johnson, General Mobolaji Johnson, I think that the Lagos State government has done very well to organize for him the equivalent of a state burial, considering his legacy, considering his contributions to the development of Lagos State, and also the pioneer role that he played in that regard. And considering the fact that he ran an administration that was noted for its integrity. When, you know, that government left after the Murtala Muhammad coup, and many of the governors were, you know, interrogated and investigated, it was only Mobolaji Johnson and Oluwole Rotimi, you know, who was governor in Oyo State, you know, who were exonerated, you know, of having had no blame and no blemish. And now, you know, during his funeral, the Lagos State government has taken the step of naming the Onikon Stadium after him. Onikon Stadium in Lagos will now be known as the Mobolaji Johnson Stadium.
There's another stadium, though, that's named after him already,
yes? Deserved.
Yes, there's another one, isn't there? This is the second stadium to be named after him.
Well, this is the one that was announced yesterday, the famous Onikon Stadium, you know, and I think it's honor well deserved.
Yes.
But the best way in which Mobolaji Johnson's successor in the governance of Lagos State, you know, can pay tribute to his legacy is to sustain, you know, the example of commitment, of diligence, of hard work, of transparency and accountability that he stood for. And for the rest of his life, even in retirement, he remained committed to the public space, either as somebody involved in conservation. You know, he was a very prominent figure in the Nigerian Conservation Fund movement, you know, and to understand that, you know, it's not just enough to go and wear ashwebi, flowing gowns and all that to say we are paying tribute to Mobolaji Johnson. What lessons are they taking away from his example, from his legacy?
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
very, very true. So important. And just quickly on the INEC smart card readers, it's just always shocking to me that it's still up for discussion. I think I'm just going to say that. It's just shocking that it's still a topic that is up for discussion. It should be a no-brainer in any given society in 2019. What a shame.
Well, you have any other people with you?
Yes, I do, actually. The Daily Independent, the headline is Growing Impunity Destroying Elections in Nigeria, according to INEC. So that actually kind of follows on a bit. And below that, wants sponsors of political thugs to be prosecuted, also says that voter confidence is being eroded, and insists on Electoral Offences Commission tribunal. So that's INEC's call again. And then after that, just to the side of that, there's a report that a canoe mishap claims 6 girls in Kebbi State. That's such a shame. Rest in peace. A canoe mishap has killed 6 girls in a particular local government area of the state. And any other headlines on here? Yes, federal government begins remodeling of grazing reserves into ranches in 7 states, as we discussed. And Nigeria's annual import bill drops, according to the CBN. And lastly, the government committed to ending impunity, according to Attorney General Malami.
Okay, well, if you may just take a look at Vanguard, the Vanguard newspaper of Nigeria. The lead story here is Apapa gridlock. 2 killed as task team, truck drivers clash. Mob invades Vanguard premises, gridlock worsens. We're on the trail of erring policeman. This is on page 39 of the Vanguard newspaper today. And what the story says essentially is that, look, there was this driver. There was no traffic. It was on the Maitu Apapa Expressway. And, a policeman had asked him for bribe, 100 naira. And then, of course, something happened. They were arguing with themselves. And it was tear gas for not paying the 100 naira. And the truck driver lost control. And they ran into 2 persons, killed them on the spot. And then that caused a lot of problem because, some people started chasing the truck driver and the policeman escaped. But I think what is reassuring about this is that the Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Udumosu, is saying that all those involved in the crisis, including the mobile policeman that ran away, will be arrested and be made to face the music, the story says.
But this is what we're seeing now in December. All kinds of random checkpoints that are not usually there are springing up because policemen are trying to extort people and get their Christmas money and what have you. And this has had tragic consequences. Something needs to be done about that.
The way the governor had said that no vehicle inspection officers should be on the roads on between 12 and 3 every day except for between 12 and 3 every day because of traffic situations across Lagos. I think a similar sort of policy needs to be imposed on these security officers, the police in particular, around this time of year. Because there's no
December.
Need. Exactly. There's no need for you to be harassing people the way you are.
The members of the presidential task team, they were deployed to help ease traffic along the Apapa Expressway. But at this particular time, when this incident occurred, the report says it was at 8 a.m. in the morning, and there was no traffic gridlock. So whoever that policeman was more interested in his own pocket.
Of course. Exactly. Which is why he tear-gassed somebody. Yes, they had nothing to do with the public. Exactly. They need to be stopped. On Saturday, I was on Glover Road and just ran into some completely random checkpoints. And they literally spring up everywhere. Oniru as well.
Yep, they're all
from
over.
Nowhere, they just,
they're all over.
Because they're trying to raise money.
Yeah, the lucky roundabouts now during the day, you're seeing them there and active, and you're wondering what they're doing and why they're not being stopped. But hey, no one's going to stop them, but it needs to stop in one way or another.
It does.
Well, another paper there.
Daily Trust here, and we have Wadume, 4 months after, killer soldiers yet to face court-martial. I appreciate this headline because this was huge news and it went quiet. So this is bringing it back to the front burner, what is going on 4 months after. And then we got over 807 petitions over 2019 elections. INEC, that's ridiculous. Leila, what do you have very quickly in a few seconds?
The New Telegraph, APC mocks PDP, secondus for serial electoral losses. So the APC coming out, and I would say this is in response to the PDP yesterday with Uche Secondus coming out and saying that they're not going to contest in elections anymore if we don't have e-voting. So the APC have mocked them for losing their elections. And below DSS, how troublemakers want to destabilize Nigeria. Their poor call. That's it. It's time now for a short break on The Morning Show. When we return, Ojiapi is going to be here with details on what's trending. Do stay with us. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on Arise News. And we are going to continue on some news headlines before Ojiapi comes in with details on what's trending. Do we have any more newspapers? The Guardian?
Well, the UK newspapers today, the major story in some of the papers is about the NHS and the United States. The Daily Telegraph says, we have no interest in the NHS, says Trump. And then if you go to the Daily Express front page story, Trump, I wouldn't want NHS on silver platter. And then the Guardian of London says, curbing ops pressure over NHS as Trump roused back. Then the I newspaper says Corbyn cast doubt on Trump's NHS pledge. Then the Sun says Trump thumbs chomp over NHS lies. You know, this has been a major campaign issue as the United Kingdom prepares for the December 12 polls, with Labour in particular and Jeremy Corbyn insisting that, look, the Conservatives, and particularly Boris Johnson, what they want to do is to just trade off the NHS in the UK to the United States, and that would amount to higher cost for people on the NHS. But of course, this came up when Trump arrived in the United Kingdom, and yesterday, as he arrived at the Buckingham Palace after having tea with Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall, that's Camilla, you know, some of the people there, they were carrying placards protesting about NHS, and this has become a major campaign issue, perhaps compelling President Trump to give clarifications that, look, in fact, there was no time at which the United States planned to take over the NHS in the UK post-Brexit. But, of course, the Labour and Jeremy Corbyn, they are insisting that they have some records, you know, of discussions along that line. But we'll see how it goes. The Conservatives were a bit uncomfortable. They were hoping that Donald Trump would not say anything that will affect their chances in the elections. But I think so far, you know, President Trump has kept his comments to NATO. You know,
he's really on his best behavior.
Yes,
he's trying.
Yes. I guess, you know, when you go and have dinner with the Queen, you know, you will not try to cause any problem. No. But the big fireworks will be at the 2-hour formal meeting today at the, NATO summit, NATO anniversary. There will be a lot to come out of that. And I hope that President Trump already would, not continue along the lines that we saw yesterday when he referred to President Macron as being nasty, and that his reference to NATO has been brain dead is unacceptable.
Yeah, but Trump said all kinds of ghastly things about NATO. So I think with Trump, he's allowed to insult people and be bombastic, but nobody else can. But now, I just find it really interesting that Trump is in the position where he's defending NATO so passionately. And I'm wondering, did Emmanuel Macron study psychology? Was this some kind of a way for him to sort of manipulate Trump? Because that outburst from Macron is uncharacteristic. That's for starters. Secondly, it's gotten a positive result for NATO. Trump, that was threatening to withdraw, that was going to pull the plug on U.S. funding of NATO, all of a sudden is now the NATO champion. In fact, because NATO is an American brainchild, this 70th anniversary ought to have happened in Washington, D.C. It happened in London because Trump really has no interest. But all of a sudden now, he's really flying the flag for NATO. So I'm thinking maybe Macron had a good idea with this thing that he said. I'm not sure. But regarding NHS, I don't know how much stock anybody actually puts into denials by a man like Trump and a man like Boris Johnson. They're not necessarily synonymous with honesty and integrity, are they?
And that's why Corbyn is skeptical.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at The Guardian, the front page of The Guardian tried to ask, quoting Corbyn, says, if that is the case, why have these talks gone on for 2 years, right? And Corbyn is saying that he will need to seek assurances from Mr. Trump at the Buckingham Palace reception yesterday. But whatever, Donald Trump tells him, as you said, he's not likely to believe
because he changes things, he changes on a dime. I remember when he had that, we discussed this on this show, when he called in, this is Donald Trump, when he called in to Nigel Farage's radio show, said Corbyn is a terrible leader, he's going to take the UK in a bad direction. What is he saying now? I have nothing against him, I can work with him.
He has the ability to just switch up.
Yeah, so you can't really trust anything that comes out of his mouth, quite frankly.
It's quite skeptical. Anyone would be skeptical.
Talking about NATO, I mean, it will be interesting to see what comes out of that, because the issues, the allies, 29 of them, there will be 30 next year when North Macedonia is admitted, if it is admitted. On the issues of Turkey, President Erdogan, and President Macron of France have been, exchanging sparks over the issue of whether NATO is brain dead or not, and whether or not Macron understands the meaning of terrorism. With President Erdogan, challenging President Macron on what should be done about terrorism. And then there are other allies, in that body who are saying that, look, yes, Turkey may be strategic to Europe, but who admitted Turkey into NATO in the first place? Because we've seen on the side of Turkey, unilateralism. And we've seen Turkey also buying military hardware from Russia. And many of the members are uncomfortable with this.
Yes.
Even if President Trump and President Macron, on the question of Russia, are of the view that, it's better to engage Russia. And I guess they take that position, one, because of the increasing scope of, the influence of Russia. But the Russia that they worry about, may have engaged in violations of the rules of multilateralism and the international rules of engagement. But it doesn't pose threat to, the transatlantic alliance in the same manner in which the Soviet Union was a threat. And NATO, an expanded NATO is already within 1,600 kilometers, to Russia. So NATO remains very allies are discussing Russia at this conference. The other issue is China. What should be the common position of NATO on China? But of course, in that regard, you can also expect division. Yesterday, the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, met with Macron, with Boris Johnson, and President Macron also met with, President Erdogan. But whatever happens at the end of the day is the future of NATO, that we all have to be concerned about. Not that NATO will break up, but how does it strengthen itself? How does it address the issue of contributions? You were referring to President Trump earlier. Yes, President Trump was complaining that only 3 countries, and he went on Twitter to say this, were the ones funding NATO, and that was not equitable enough. But that number has since increased to 12. 12 of the countries making due contributions. And NATO spending has increased by about 316 billion pounds. And the expectation is that it will even increase, further, according to Jens Stoltenberg, who is the Secretary General of NATO. But, I don't think they're going to have a party. I don't think there's going to be a celebration. All of these issues on which the allies are divided may most likely, overshadow. There are indications already, the celebration of 70 years of the anniversary. But as I said yesterday, there's no doubt that NATO has been a very important and strategic platform for global peace and for checking, terrorism, but we'll see what happens. Okay, well, that's the NATO summit.
Yes.
At a hotel resort near Watford in the United Kingdom.